Two men climbed a Brazilian hill carrying lead masks, swallowed something at a precise hour, and waited for a signal that may never have come. When their bodies were found, the only explanation was a note containing cryptic instructions. By the end, you'll know exactly what those instructions said, why investigators could not determine how the men died, and which overlooked detail turns this from an eccentric accident into one of history's most unsettling unsolved cases. August 20, 1966. A teenager flying a kite on Morro do Vintum, a steep hill overlooking Niterói, across the bay from Rio de Janeiro, noticed something strange in the brush. Two bodies lay side by side. At first, the distance made them look like abandoned bundles. But the next day, police climbed the hill and found two adult men resting on a bed of cut leaves. Both wore suits beneath waterproof coats. There were no obvious wounds, no signs of a struggle, and no indication that anyone had robbed them. Beside the bodies were an empty water bottle, 2 towels and a packet containing the kind of homemade lead-eye shields that technicians might use around radiation. The dead men were soon identified as electronics technicians, 35-year-old Miguel José Viana and 32-year-old Manuel Pereira de Cruz. Their clothing made the scene feel planned. Their position made it feel almost ceremonial. And the masks changed everything. They covered only the eyes. There were no straps. Each had been cut from lead by hand, then bent into the crude shape of oversized spectacles. You could hold one against your face, but you could not comfortably walk in it, work in it, or defend yourself. Whatever Miguel and Manuel expected to happen on that hill, they apparently believed their eyes needed protection. Now trace their movements backward, because the trip did not begin like a suicide pact. Miguel and Manuel left Campos dos Goitacazes, their home city, on August 17. They reportedly told their families they needed to purchase equipment for their electronics work and possibly a car. They carried a substantial amount of money. After reaching Niterói by bus, they bought matching raincoats. Then they entered a local bar and purchased a bottle of mineral water. The employee who served them later remembered that one man seemed nervous and repeatedly checked his watch. That detail matters. Their note was organized around specific times, suggesting that timing was not incidental. They were following a schedule. At some point, they climbed Morro do Vintum. The route was rough, exposed and inconvenient. This was not somewhere two men in suits would wander accidentally. They brought the masks, the towels, the bottle and whatever the note meant by capsules. But much of their cash was never recovered. That raises 3 possibilities. They spent it on equipment investigators never found. Someone took it before or after they died. Or a third person supplied the plan, accepted payment and left them on the hill. Police searched for that person, but the trail dissolved into rumor. Inside one man's pocket, investigators found the message that made the case famous. It was written in Portuguese on a small sheet of paper. Translated, it read approximately: At 16:30, be at the specified location. At 18:30, ingest capsules. After effect, protect metals. Wait for mask signal. Some translations render one phrase as protect face rather than protect metals, because the handwriting is difficult to interpret. That uncertainty has fueled decades of speculation. But the basic sequence is clear. Arrive at the location. Take capsules. Wait for their effect. Use the masks. Then wait for a signal. The order suggests the men expected a controlled event. The lead masks were not disguises. They were equipment. The towels may have been intended to absorb sweat, moisture or some substance released by the body. Yet the note never identifies the capsules. No container was found. No sender was named. No explanation of the signal survived. And there was another complication: by the time the bodies reached the medical examiner, decomposition had advanced. The organs were badly preserved, and the toxicology process could not establish whether poison or psychoactive drugs had been present. The most important physical evidence may have vanished inside the victims themselves. The obvious theory is that two inexperienced men took a toxic substance during a bizarre experiment and died. But before we get to what they thought they were doing, you need to understand something even stranger. This may not have been their first attempt. Investigators learned that the men were interested in spiritualism, unexplained signals, and experiments that mixed electronics with claims of contact from another realm. According to accounts surrounding the inquiry, associates had gathered for unusual sessions involving homemade equipment and intense flashes of light. And years earlier, another electronics technician had reportedly been found dead on a hill in similar circumstances, with a lead mask nearby. That earlier connection remains poorly documented and is often repeated with more certainty than the surviving record supports. Still, police had reason to examine whether Miguel and Manuel belonged to a wider circle. The hill was not merely where they died. It may have been where they expected something to arrive. Brazil in the 1960s was experiencing rapid technological change alongside a powerful interest in spiritualism. For experimenters like Miguel and Manuel, radio engineering and the supernatural did not necessarily contradict each other. Electronics could feel like a doorway. Invisible voices traveled through the air. Television pictures appeared from distant transmitters. Radiation could pass through solid material. If science had already made the invisible real, why couldn't a carefully tuned device expose something beyond ordinary perception? People connected to the men described an interest in contacting non-human or spiritual intelligences. One associate reportedly recalled experiments using electrical apparatus and mind-altering capsules. Another account described a blast or explosion during an earlier test. Then came a witness statement with almost cinematic timing. A woman traveling near the hill on the evening the men died later reported seeing an unusual orange-colored light hovering or moving above the area. Was it a craft? A flare? Electrical equipment? Distant illumination distorted by mist? Or a memory reshaped after news of the case spread? You have to resist the temptation to turn an ambiguous light into an answer. Witness recollections gathered after a sensational event are fragile. But place that statement beside the note, wait for mask signal, and you can see why the case escaped the police file and entered folklore. The men expected a visible event at a scheduled time. Someone, or something, may have promised it to them. Every explanation solves one part of the case and breaks another. Start with murder. The missing money and mysterious capsules could indicate a fraudster. Someone may have convinced the men to pay for a ritual or electronic device, given them poison, and left before the bodies were found. But there were no confirmed injuries, no restraints, and no established suspect. Then there is suicide. The men deliberately traveled to the hill and apparently followed written instructions. Yet neither left a farewell message, and both presented the trip to their families as routine business. A joint suicide does not explain why they needed lead masks or expected a signal. Accidental overdose fits more cleanly. Perhaps they swallowed psychedelic or experimental drugs, expecting a vision. The masks may have been symbolic, or intended to block a flash of light. They could have died from toxicity, exposure, or an interaction with an undiagnosed medical condition. But two men dying almost simultaneously from an unknown substance, without leaving the substance, packaging or clear physical distress, still demands assumptions. Even the timeline is unstable. Their bodies remained exposed in heat and rain before examination. The scene was not secured with modern forensic discipline. Critical material could have degraded, washed away or been removed. The investigation did not produce a single impossible fact. It produced an empty space where nearly every decisive fact should have been. Here is the closest thing the lead mask's case gives you to a real answer. The note is not the writing of men improvising in panic. It is a checklist. Its times are exact. Its commands are brief. Its language assumes both men already understand the missing context, which location, which capsules, what effect, why protection is necessary, and what signal will follow. That means the most important instructions were given before they reached the hill. The paper was only a reminder. And that is the overlooked detail. Investigators were not trying to decode a complete message. They were holding the final fragment of a plan created somewhere else, possibly by the victims, possibly by their circle, and possibly by someone who profited from their trust. The grounded explanation is not that lead masks prove extraterrestrial contact. Lead blocks certain kinds of radiation, but these crude eye coverings would have offered little meaningful protection from a powerful exposure. They make more sense as the product of limited technical knowledge combined with absolute belief. Miguel and Mano likely went to that hill willingly. They expected the capsules to alter them. They expected a flash, transmission or spiritual encounter. Then both died before the ritual could end, or before they could realize they had been deceived. No confirmed cause of death was established. No capsule was identified. No signal was explained. The mask survived because metal does not confess, and the people who understood the plan were either dead or silent. The lead mask's case endures because it traps you between two uncomfortable possibilities. Either the men encountered something investigators could not identify, or ordinary human belief became powerful enough to lead two trained technicians onto a lonely hill, persuade them to swallow unknown capsules, cover their eyes with lead, and wait for a signal that never came. One possibility sounds supernatural. The other may be more frightening. If this broke your brain a little, subscribe. We drop one of these every week. And next time, we go back to a city where the mystery did not leave two people motionless. It seized hundreds and forced them to move until their bodies collapsed. The dancing plague of 1518 made hundreds dance uncontrollably.